Hello, Clean Energy Shorts listeners. This is Jay-Z, and let me do a right quick, proper intro for my friend Elisa Wood. Well, I'm just going to read from her amazing new website, Energy Changemakers. She launched this site last year. She's the co-founder of Microgrid Knowledge and Real Energy Writers. She previously wrote for S&P Global Platts, and I got to read this. You've got to check out Energy Changemakers. Here's their why. The time has come to reframe the energy paradigm and form a decentralized grid. The technology exists, funding exists, public support exists, but it's still not easy to build distributed energy projects. And that's because our grid is designed for another century, governed by rules that no longer make sense, and dominated by economic models that encourage big power plants and long transmission lines. Not the energy of the future, which is nimble, local, clean, distributed energy. Energy Changemakers is designed to bring all of us together to find solutions to overcome these problems. And as business guru Ken Blanchard says, none of us is as smart as all of us. Here's our interview with Elisa Wood.
I'm talking to one of my favorite people in energy, Elisa Wood, or Elisa Wood, depends on how you know her.
Either's fine. Either works.
You have been covering this for decades. So with all this benoodle stuff going on in the clean energy space, what is the biggest misconception about clean energy right now that you want everybody to know?
It's a really good question. Part of it is, I think that there's two worlds out there. There's the media world when we're talking about energy, and there's the energy world, what's really happening in energy. The media world is all about right now fossil fuels versus renewables. Like that's what we're all thinking about all the time. But in the world where I live in energy, which is the electric grid, you don't run the grid based on politics. You run the grid based on trying to find the cleanest, cheapest, most reliable forms of energy, whatever form. Or solar is cheap. And so right now, there's more solar being built than anything else, politics aside, even with the loss of the tax credits. It's fantastic seeing these companies just really looking at finding ways to innovate and get beyond that. So I think the biggest misconception is that the media has most of the world focused on sort of the wrong argument, or looking at it the wrong way.
Being a journalist, and even as a PR person, we're taught be neutral, don't take sides. That's changing. I get that it shouldn't be political. All electrons are the same when you're going through the wires, but it is getting political, and it feels like clean energy. It's like, oh, you're a snowflake, girl.
I love it. Yeah. No, it's definitely out there. There's no doubt. No, I've seen like some big companies suddenly decide to take the term sustainability out of their corporate reports, and things like that are going on. But again, I think a lot of that is more window dressing than reality. I think, we're going to see, no doubt, we're going to see some solar projects and wind projects run into trouble because of what's a good word to use? The dislike, I'll be mild, the dislike from the federal government right now of renewables, which is just silly. Again, it's electrons. But yeah, there's going to be short-term pain. We're seeing it. I mean, Revolution Wind, the offshore wind project off the coast of New England, 90% built, and then Trump administration comes in and shuts it down based on national security, which is just, if you've ever followed an offshore wind project, like I've covered these things from the time they're proposed to the years later when they finally get their environmental approvals. They go through massive scrutiny. If there was any kind of security issue for revolutionary wind, we would have known it a long time ago. It's clearly just, I hate to say it, probably a shakedown, but something's going on there. Anyway.
I don't know. Yeah.
Shake up, shake down. Something's going on there. So there's going to be, I don't mean to sugarcoat what's going on here. You're getting me so emotional. No. There will be companies that will be hurt. There's going to be short-term pain. But I guess my point is that politics is not going to win here because we need power. The power demand is growing right now, which is really unusual. This hasn't happened in decades. And we need to build power. We need to build it fast. So there's this incredible market push right now. And I think what I love so much about writing about this industry is that these are amazing times. And I've seen this throughout the history of the industry. These are the times when the innovators kick in. And I'm talking to people and they're coming up with these amazing, amazing things.
Like what?
It's like,
Give me an example. What's something you're like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant?
Okay, there's a couple of things I love. One is big, one's small. So one is I've got a podcast actually coming up on the Energy Changemakers podcast this week. It is two of the big giants, Eaton and Siemens, got together to create this new microgrid product. Basically, what they realized is that like nobody's getting anything built right now. It's really hard to get things built. It's hard to get through permitting. It's hard to get interconnection. So these data centers are out there. They need power desperately. And they can't get it. So they're doing weird things like signing these nuclear contracts and reviving coal plants, just weird things. So they're trying to save them from the weirdness. And so what they've done is they've created this kind of microgrid that can be built in sections, but large sections, like 250 megawatts a piece. So these are big microgrids. Some people are calling them like mega microgrids or
mega microgrid
stuff. And all these different terms are coming up now, but they're big. And the idea is that, you can connect to the grid or not connect to the grid if you want to run this thing. So you can get it done quickly. You can get your power installed quickly. So speed to power is one of the big terms you hear all the time now.
Yes.
This was really cool. Two big companies, competitors in a lot of ways, got together and figured this out, and they're doing it together. That's one that got me. And then totally on the other end, there's a company that is doing something called driveway solar. Have you heard of that?
Dry wave solar.
Driveway, like car, driveway. Where you park your car. Yeah, it's so cool. It's a family, mother, husband, and daughter. The daughter runs the company. And it's a solar installation that goes in your driveway. You can park your car like underneath it, or you can move it. It's actually mobile though. You can move it around. So, if you move, you're no longer leaving behind your solar panels, which is a big deal, right? People put in solar on their house and they're going to move, but now you can bring it with you. And so that's an indication. That's to me is like, this is the side I love, this kind of small energy that is close to people that we can control ourselves. I think that's the future, those kind of things. We always use the iPhone, right? The iPhone's a big kind of cliche in this industry. What's the next iPhone for energy? But I feel like it's a really good analogy because whenever you see technology start to get smaller and powerful and more versatile, we move in that direction. We move towards that technology. And that's the kind of thing that's happening in energy. These smaller, more flexible, more local, more controlled by the consumer is the direction we're going in. So that I'm excited about that too.
Yeah. And you're ahead of the curve with getting excited about microgrids, right? No one knew what a microgrid was. How did this happen? How did they go from like all the cool kids are using it? Is it data centers that finally pushed it over?
No, I think it was more. 2012 was when we first started seeing interest in microgrids. They've been around forever, but after Superstorm Sandy, it became a realization that this interconnected grid is really vulnerable, and microgrids are a way to ensure power when the grid goes down. That was the first premise, and that was what got everything started. But again, the innovators came in, and they started looking at the microgrid and saying, we can do more with this than just backup power. This is a pretty interesting item here. And they started doing things like really figuring out ways to make for the microgrid to make money by interacting with the grid so that the customer gets some revenue. One of the really interesting trends I find right now in microgrids is that we're seeing more and more off-grid microgrids, and I'm not talking about people up in the mountains somewhere.
I was thinking about like Hurricane Helene people that were impacted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're doing off-grid microgrids, those kind of folks. They always have though. But now we're seeing hotels in New York City. We're seeing, apartment buildings in like major urban areas that are looking at the numbers and saying, you know what? It's actually cheaper for us to do a microgrid and just not even bother connecting to the grid. Or in California, there's vineyards that are saying, we need a microgrid, but it's going to take us forever to get this thing interconnected to the grid. We'll just go off grid. Someday we can get the interconnection, great. If not, we'll just, stay off grid.
So a hotel wants a microgrid. It's not like who you're going to call Microgrid Depot. Right? Wouldn't that be great?
Home Depot and pick one
you
up.
And me, baby.
That's right. Call us. No, we don't install. I do get those questions like, I want to do a microgrid and such. Can you help me? No, I don't do that. I'm a journalist. But yeah, no, and there's a lot of microgrid companies out there. That's another fascinating thing about the microgrid industry and how it evolved is that when we were first doing it, there was like, I remember getting a phone call from one of the big energy technology companies. It was really funny, actually. And I'd written an article about microgrids, and he said to me, "Oh, I read your article, and I just want to know, do you really believe that's true? Like these microgrids, you know?" I said, "Well, yeah, I think it's pretty cool." And he said, "Okay, because so do I, but I got to convince my boss. Will you talk to my boss?" Anyway, they were one of the early. They came in as one of the early microgrid developers, and there was like Schneider and S&C and who else? Siemens, and they all started coming. The bigger companies, right? So that's the sign of health, right? When the big companies come in and start doing it. But also a lot of smaller companies came in and actually have grown a little bit bigger over the years. I guess my point is that there's a whole lot of options out there. If you do want to build a microgrid, there's a whole bunch of companies from big to small that do them. So you can't just go buy it at Home Depot, but you can find somebody who can do it for you. If you're a commercial industrial or you're a community or something, home, that's still pretty tough. There are some people doing home microgrids, but that's kind of a tough market.
One of the factors, besides the fact that there weren't a whole lot of the Siemens of the world doing it, right, was also the cost. So how do we get those prices down?
Well, a lot of microgrids use solar and batteries, so the prices have come down with the solar and batteries. Also, the controllers, which is the brain of the microgrid, that software has gotten better and better over the years. That's not a real expensive part of the microgrid, but it's the part that can determine how expensive it is to run the microgrid or how much money the revenue the microgrid can bring in. So all of that technology has gotten better over the years. And the other thing is that, and this is really important, the companies have come up with business models to make it cheaper. And this is always the case, right, in energy. Right. Like, remember solar? I mean, solar was a great idea. This was way back. But, it's way, way too expensive. And then like Shiger Shah and other people came up with the idea of payment over time, energy as a service, solar as a service kind of thing, where you don't put any money down and somebody puts it on your roof and you just pay a monthly bill for your energy. So the same thing with microgrids. There's microgrid as a service out there. So the business models are out there to make it work so it's affordable too.
But now we've got supply chain issues. Oh my gosh, talk to me about that. How much of a wrench is that?
Microgrids are smaller. I mean, where I'm really hearing, we might start seeing some problems with batteries, but where I'm so far hearing a lot of problems are more like the big, the generators for natural gas plants are like this. I don't know, what is it, 7 years or something? I don't know what the.
Oh, well, it's already long. It was like 2 years, and now it's like wait until your kid grows out.
Like you have to wait a long time to get the right equipment. And the other thing is, the microgrid does not hook up to the transmission grid. It hooks up to the distribution grid, and the interconnection delays are mostly on the transmission grid. So the microgrids are avoiding those kind of problems that are delaying. But we're in a weird time now. I mean, do you understand the tariffs? I mean, I can't keep up with it. Like, I don't know what is a tariff on what. So that craziness is hurting everybody because they don't know what business has to know what to expect. They can't plan. Strange times for sure.
How's the investment looking? I mean, are the investors, are they frightened, or are they like, let's go?
I'm not hearing anything about the investors being frightened. Not about microgrids. Investors are pretty excited right now. Again, because it's interesting. We're kind of at this weird place, right? Because we have, on the one hand, we've got the tariffs and the discontinuation of the solar and wind tax incentives, and the EV tax incentives, because they're also often a part of microgrids now. We put those all like pulling microgrids and distributed energy back, right? But then we've got the data centers and this new demand for power that are pulling them forward. And I think the force that's pulling them forward is much stronger than the force that's holding them back.
The force is strong with them.
The force is strong with microgrids. The industry, especially solar, has been through this before, right? They've seen tax incentives come and go. They know that it's temporary disruption, but then you figure out the business model and you move on. So I think that force pulling forward is stronger, and that's what the investors are seeing. Early on in microgrids, that was what we heard all the time. We just can't get, the investors don't understand what we're doing. We can't get investment money. That's been gone for a long time. That's not an issue. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier nuclear. We've been hearing about SMR, small modular reactors. I get nuclear because it's a steady baseload, but I've seen very few nuclear projects come to fruition because they're so flipping expensive. Where are you going to put that nuclear waste? Nobody wants it. I mean, that's another level of NIMBY, right? So talk to me. What's your view? What are you hearing about SMRs?
I have my personal view, and then I can tell you what others are saying.
Bring both. Come on.
I will say that I am seeing some microgrid companies that are talking about doing SMR down the road. Like they're saying, like 5 years from now, they think it's going to be a thing. I'm like you. I mean, I've been watching nuclear for years. It always costs so much more than people expect it to. People don't like it. But there's another thing too. And I think the other thing is that the grid is becoming more flexible. Like the grid is being run on software. Everything is about timing and place now, right? It's about being able to move assets quickly, ramp up back assets quickly. A nuclear, you don't do that. Like you said, it's baseload, but it's kind of an inert kind of approach. It just doesn't fit to me into where the grid is going. We'll probably see some of it. I don't think it's going to be huge, but I could be wrong, and you can have me back on your show in 5 years, and I will confess to being wrong if that's the case.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm going to definitely interview some SMR folks because I'm like, help me understand. It just seems like we're all about agility, speed to power, and let's use the elephant of fuels.
But folks I know who are talking to the data centers say there's a real desperation out there. Like they're just grabbing at stuff because they're so worried. In the data center world, the ability to get your data center built quickly is huge. I mean, you're going to lose accounts, you're going to lose money if you can't get that data center in. So they know they have to do something fast, and they're grabbing all over the place, even in illogical ways, like stuff that's not going to be ready for many years.
How are they getting these things done? Do you have any idea how long it takes for a data center to get up and running these days?
Not long. That's part of the problem. Yeah, my understanding is that it's not, compared to power anyway, right? Power plant or any kind of power project, transmission, whatever. That's part of the problem, is that you can get a data center in the ground and up and running years sooner than you can typically get a power plant to power that data center running. So that's why you're seeing kind of crazy deals being made and kind of a panic out there. The data center industry is starting to run into some problems the power industry has run into in the past, NIMBY issues, for example. But still, just from a physical building it, it's quicker to do a data center.
That's interesting. Where? Want to ask you, you've talked about Ukraine grid withstanding attacks. What did we learn from Ukraine, or what are we learning still from the ongoing attacks about the need for microgrids or energy resilience?
Short answer, no.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's always funny when somebody asks me about something I've written about, because I've been writing about energy for like 30 years. And sometimes people will come to me like at a conference and they'll go, I just don't agree with, and they'll say something. And I realized I must have written something, and who knows when I wrote it, and what was I even thinking back then, and so they think I remember, or maybe they think I just wrote it. So I was, ooh. So I got a little panicky when you first started saying, you've written about, oh no, what is this article? But yeah, on Ukraine, the lesson from Ukraine, it's a big one, is that electric grids are really vulnerable. They're interconnected. We've seen this in the U.S. Because was it 2003? There was that huge power outage in the Northeast and part of Canada.
Squirrel.
Took down millions. Yeah. I mean, it's a squirrel. It's a branch falling on a line in the right place. And you have these cascading failures. And now we're seeing that people have figured out, if this big machine, this grid, is subject to cascading failures, and if we harm it, we can really do some damage in war. And that's what Russia has figured out in terms of Ukraine. So they've done a lot of damage to that grid. There are some great organizations out there that are bringing microgrids and distributed energy into Ukraine, trying to keep the power going, to band-aid up this system until it can actually be repaired.
Are you going to mention one of our favorites, Footprint Project?
Footprint Project and New Use Energy are the two that come to mind. They work together on this, yeah. And Footprint Project, I think, did some work in your neck of the woods in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Storms.
No,
yeah.
They were major players in the recovery for Helene. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I hope to have the Footprint Project on one of these podcasts coming up.
Great organization. They're getting a little bigger now, but they started as just the principal and his partner and his brother driving these solar microgrid panels on the back of trucks into these areas where there's been a disaster, and making sure the disaster workers and desperate people who are desperate for power have some power to get back up and running. I mean, they were out there in the mud, sleeping on people's floors, and they were just doing this as a nonprofit, out of the goodness of their hearts, that they see a disaster, they watch where the disasters are, and they get their teams ready. And now, like some of the bigger companies like Schneider and others have gone in and are giving them some support, so they have more equipment and whatnot. But yeah, very, very cool organization. A lot of respect for them. And they always, one thing in watching their work, it always raised the question for me: if these 3 people with no money basically can go in and help some community center, get a first aid center going during a disaster, why can't the utilities do that? I think the conversation we have a lot in this business of the utility business model is troubling in some ways, right? It's rigid and they're stuck. I mean, they have to please the regulators, they have to please the investors. It's not an easy place to be, but it's a shame that all of that gets in the way sometimes of obvious, simple solutions to things,
Yes. All right. Well, we're not going to focus on the bad. We're gonna end strong. Tell me something good that you are really excited about in this space.
That's a lot I'm excited about. Let me see.
And it could be about your energy change makers, because that's pretty new, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about energy changemakers. So yeah, okay, thank you. So I had started, about 14 years ago, Microgrid Knowledge with my partners. And we sold that 2 years ago to Endeavor Business Media. And so I kind of started thinking, what do I want to do next? And so I started something called Energy Changemakers. And we have a magazine, Decentralized Grid, and another one, Microgrids Now. And we're focusing on innovation. We're looking at that cutting edge stuff that's happening next. And, if you're going to ask me what I'm really excited about, I think it's the trend towards communities taking more control of their energy. Neighborhoods taking more control, communities taking more control, kind of that bottom up local movement. Because really, that's where you really could save money. If we could figure out a system where we're cutting out the middleman, where our people, and the technology's there, right? It's really a matter of getting the business models together, where the community owns the energy, can you control the kind of energy they want. It's closer to them, so it's more reliable. If you build a community solar project, or if you build a microgrid, whatever, the energy's closer, doesn't travel across big transmission wires and get lost. So I think that's the trend that we talk about a lot. Energy Changemakers, and it's one that I'm really excited about.
All right, I got to ask you one more question on that one. Mm-hmm. What's it like now for a community who's like, you know what, we want community solar?
Yeah, it's a lot easier now, depending on where you are, depending on the state regulations. But there's a lot of companies now that specialize just in community solar, doing cool stuff. I just did a story recently about Ampion. They're a company that basically handles the customer side of the community solar. And they ran into this problem. So community solar gets certain tax credits. And there are some states where there's so much community solar, you couldn't find enough customers to get the tax credit. The tax credits are for low-income customers. So like Maine has got a lot of community solar. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to find. You know how they find customers? This blew me away. I didn't know this.
They look under rocks and trees and use moves to track them down.
Yeah, I mean, they literally go knocking on doors. I mean,
really? I was kidding. Oh, okay.
No, they knock on doors. I was blown away. They don't. I thought there was databases and whatnot that they were. The only way they can find low-income customers is to kind of, think this is a neighborhood, and they go knock on the doors. Or they told me they were really successful when they found a restaurant in northern Maine where a lot of locals went, and the restaurant partnered with them to get the word out. But that's what they have to do. So they have a lot of trouble finding these customers in order to monetize the community solar project for the Maine community. Because they need the low-income customers for the tax credit.
I want to be the diner lady. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be fun next career.
Go to diners and talk up solar community. Oh my God, I'd be so caffeinated.
So what they ended up doing was they found a utility in Illinois, Commonwealth Edison, that actually needed to do something with low-income customers, or wanted to do something to bring low-income customers' prices down. The long story short is they are building the project in Maine, and they are giving the savings, because community solar's big claim to fame is you get cost savings, right? And they're applying the cost savings to low-income customers in Illinois. So it's just free money. I mean, the utility's making nothing on it. It goes over there to these low-income customers who decide to opt in, and their bill suddenly gets reduced.
I've asked all the questions I had in mind. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I want to say that I am so excited that you are doing this podcast
Thank you.
because I have always found you to be one of the best conversationalists in energy. Always engaging, and you know so much, and you've done so much. I mean, God, when we first met, you were working for
SNL Financial.
SNL.
SNL
Yeah,
Energy.
they became
Now
S&P.
S&P.
Yeah, yeah. And you've done so much over the years that I think I'm just very excited about your podcast. So thank you for doing this.
Hey, thanks for that soundbite.
You're
That was not paid. I don't think I could have oh my gosh, thank you so much.
much deserved.
Well, I will let you, thank you so much for your time.